Yeah, how's it going? Today is 25th of February, Sunday, and we are taking a look at the market, what kind of opportunities are available up there. In today's videos, we're going to be taking a look at finance, perhaps every weekend, or Sundays, starting with Sundays, we're going to be taking a look at just finance, right? In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at spending, right? How's government spending, if anything. There might be some opportunities, but first, let's try to understand everything what is happening in the world, as well as some of the new announcements made and or some of the spending initiatives, right? Let's begin by taking a look at NATO, or North Atlantic Treaty Organization, and some of the spending. Let's begin by understanding where NATO is allocating its finance. I can take a look at briefly, right? Some of the initiatives are being launched by NATO, other opportunities up there, something that was called, I think, Diana, right? Which is kind of interesting, right? So there are a lot of initiatives for businesses, but before we can do that, let's take a look at some of the spending, right? So funding NATO, right? So how money would be allocated to NATO in the first place, right? From there, NATO might be allocating those funds into different initiatives, including perhaps allocating some of the funds to businesses, right? But let's try to understand it. NATO is sourced through the resource through direct and or indirect contributions of its members. NATO common funds are composed of direct contributions to collect budgets and programs, which equal to only 0.3%. Okay. I don't know about only, right? But either way, that's the budget or administration. Usually, perhaps would be 0.1. That would be perhaps 10%. So we're looking with working with what 0.3%. I don't know. I don't know. Of total alliance defense spending around 3.3 billion for 2023. So that's administration budget. Is there more what they're doing with that other than administrating? But either way, that's my understanding. These funds enable NATO to deliver capabilities around the entirety of organizations and its military commands. Okay, so perhaps they have hired staff and they might have buildings, right? If they have buildings, perhaps I can rationalize some of that spending that we are taking a look at 3.3 billion. We might have a lot of headquarters in different parts of the world, so perhaps 3.3 billion of more than administration. Briefly, right, there's some bullet points. Within these bullet points, there's a lot unnecessary wording and or phrases, and perhaps that's legal lingo, right? What NATO is. So instead of saying what NATO is, they will try to explain what NATO it's not. NATO is not that. NATO is not that. It's a waste of everyone's time. But the information is there. I won't be reading it. That's legal wording where they're trying to explain what NATO is not, which is a waste of everyone's time if you would ask me. Well, but some people decided to describe NATO in this particular way, so which is great. But if you would ask, that's unnecessary wording and confusion, and perhaps there's a role to play when it comes to confusing people instead of explaining. There are 4 points what I'm really interested in. So that would be when it comes to funding, and that would be indirect funding of NATO, direct funding of NATO, financial management, accountability, and transparency, bodies and stakeholders involvement, right? So that would be 4 different bullet points that would be important. Indirect funding of NATO, then the North Atlantic Council, NATO top political decisions making body, will anonymously decides to engage in operations or missions. There is no obligations for each and or every member of contributing unless it's an Article 5 collective defense operations, in which case expectations are different. In all cases, NATO and or organizations does not have its own armed forces, so alliance commit troops and or requirements on a voluntary basis. Contributing varies a form and scale. For example, our allies can choose to contribute few soldiers or thousands of troops to NATO operations or missions. Contributing can also include any kind of materials from armored vehicles, naval vessels, or helicopters to all forms of equipment, support, and medical and other. These contributions are offered by individual allies taken in from their overall defense capabilities from combined alliance capability, which covering the access associated with the deployment. So it's very flexible. Okay, which is great. It's very flexible, but there's so much room as of now, right? Something that was highlighted previously. I'm gonna come back to some of the people making a lot of announcements, right? But there's again, there's so much words within those words. There's a lot of room, so to say. Let's forget. The 2% defense investment guidelines. In 2006, NATO defense ministers agreed to commit a minimum of 2% of the gross domestic product GDP to defense spending. So all the participating governments should consider their own military spending, right? To defense spending to continue to ensure alliance military readiness. These guidelines also serve as an indicator of the country's political will be contributed to NATO's common defense efforts, since the defense capability of each member has an impact on overall performance of alliance capability and political and military organizations, right? As a group, everyone should do their part, right? If someone is lacking, it's never a good thing, right? So I have taken a look and briefly, there's no really need of pointing out any governments. Perhaps those governments would make some difference over the upcoming months, but as of now, some of the governments perhaps contributing more, some of those governments contributing at all, nothing. But why would they, right? The combined wealth of non-US alliance measures in GDP is almost equal to the part of the United States. However, non-US allies together spend less than half of what the United States spends on defense. I would like to challenge the statement. So this is what they are saying, right? They're saying that US is spending. In next video, I'm going to take a look at US spending. We're going to take a look at some of the data and what is US spending. What is it? I think US is just making things up, if you would ask me. I'll challenge the statement, but we're going to come back to that in just a second. This imbalance has been constant and varies throughout the history of alliances, has grown more pronounced since the strategic events in 11th of September 2001, after which United States significantly increased its defense spending. For those who don't know history, same day, September 11th, there was Congress within U.S. who said that U.S. don't know how much money they spend. They don't know. There's no money. Same day they were making this announcement. I think that's the date that they're referring to. I'll pull out some newspapers, right? The volume of U.S. defense expenditure represents approximately 2/3 of defense spending of alliance as a whole. However, it is not as a amount of the United States contribution or overall running of NATO, which shared with allies according to the principles of common funding. Moreover, U.S. defense spending is also covers commitments outside of Euro-Atlantic area. It should not be noted, no less, the alliance relies on the United States for the provision of some essential capabilities regarding of instance, intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance, air-to-air refueling, ballistic missile defense, and airborne electronic warfare. The effects of the 2007-2008 financial crisis and the declining share of resources devoted to defense in many allied countries up to 2014 have exacerbated this imbalance and also revealed growing asymmetric incapability among European allies. France, Germany, and United Kingdom together represent approximately 50% of defense spending by the non-US alliance at the Wales Summit 2014 in response to Russia's illegal annexation of Crimea. So what they're referring to, so the France, how many people are living close to 100, right, million, Germany close to 100, and UK close to 100 compared to perhaps other nations within Europe, right? In response to Russia's legal annexation of Crimea and amid broader instability. in the Middle East. NATO leaders agreed on defense investment pledge to reverse the trend of declining defense budgets and decades. Allied countries meeting the 2% guidelines to defense spending will aim to continue to do so. Always those current proportion of GDP spends on a different below with the level with half any decline aim to increase defense expansion in real terms as GDP grows and aim to move towards 2% guidelines with dedicated with the view of meeting the NATO capability targets and filing NATO capability shortfalls, right? I'm gonna be taking a look at perhaps. So let's say I have a rocket, right? Can I say the rocket price? What's a rocket price? Can I say it's 5 million, right? Because I built this rocket, I would say this is the price of this rocket. So here you go. My government spending is 50 million now. I'll come back to that in just a second. US and all the counts how military spending within the US works as of now and how people can trace it back and where the money is going. There isn't any account. There's nothing. So how US is rationalizing of the points that they are making within this article. They cannot. Where's the argument? Where's the account? There is an account. The Pentagon keeps failing all the audits. So what I'm saying is, while they pointing that EU is not doing its part, I don't know what US is doing. I have no idea. No one knows what Pentagon's doing, other than failing all the audits. Yourself, if you're interested in learning more, I have published a book or journal, overall system when it comes to managing of your time. That would be how to plan your day and how to structure your time. That would be, if you were to pick up this journal, I would highly recommend you work from cover to cover. That would be enough time to develop a habit, something that potentially would last over time. You would need to stick with the system, right? And every page would be 24 hours, and those 24 hours would be very important. I have highlighted very important areas within every day, something that would need to be completed, right? And you would need to stick with this system for a prolonged period of time before making any changes to it. I would highly recommend to do that, and I have put every day together for a reason. If you were to pick up this journal, I would highly recommend sticking to whatever is there. You can find the QR code in Corner Company's website below. I'll read this last part and I'll close the video on this bit, right? So that will be a brief introduction with NATO and some of the defense spending, right? Perhaps some of the governments not doing what they should. If anything, we can highlight some of the key points, right? I don't know if the US is doing while US is looking to bring EU attention up to the standard, I would like to bring US attention up to a standard. So it's a very friendly relationship. We have a little bit of back and forth, so to say, right? In order to ensure that these funds are spent in the most effective and efficient way to acquire and deploy modern capabilities, NATO allies have also agreed that at last 20% of defense expenditures should be developed at a major new equipment. This includes associated research and development participate as a crucial indicator for the scale and place of moderation, right? As well as I would highly recommend for all the countries consider spending 2% of GDP on research and development, right? Not necessarily just on perhaps military expenditure, but either way. The Defense Investment Pledge endorsed in 2014 called for allies to meet the 2% of GDP guidelines for defense expenditure and the 20% of annual defense expenditure guideline on the major new equipment by 2024. Since Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine in February 2022, majority of allies have committed to investing more and more quickly in defense. At the 2023 Vilnius Summit, NATO leaders agreed to new defense investment pledge, making an enduring commitment to invest at least 2% of GDP annually on defense. They also affirmed that in many cases expenditure beyond 2% GDP will be needed in order to remedy exist shortfalls of meet requirements across the domains, starting from the more contested security orders. The new defense investment pledge also calls for allies to meet the 10% annual defense expenditure guidelines to measure new equipment, including research and development. In 2024, 18 countries of allies are expected to spend at least 2% of their GDP on defense, a six-fold increase in 2014. Then only the allies met the 2% more guideline. Over the past decade, NATO allies in Europe have steadily increased their collective investment in defense from 1.47% of the combined GDP in 2014 to 2% in 2024. Then they are investing combined total of around 380 billion in defense, right? So there's a lot of contracts, right? Let's perhaps later upcoming week we might be able to take a look at some of these contracts. So might be available a lot of opportunities, right? If there's a drone that's made of cardboard and someone is looking to sell this cardboard drone in material cost, it can cost, I don't know, $100. And someone would say that the worth of this drone is, I don't know, $40,000, right? So perhaps we're all gonna reach this 2% of GDP expenditure. To learn more about what consists of NATO 2% guidelines is defense expenditure and NATO 2% guidelines, right? Let's close on that. Let's progress the US and see what we can find about US accounts, defense spending accounts, and where that money has been allocated, and if there was any money allocated. Thanks for watching. See you next one.